Hey guys, welcome back to the channel today. We're going to talk a little bit more about some can sniffing and reverse engineering. So in the last video we did the throttle input to the Cayman. It's a pretty easy one to find in the CAN network because one, it's kind of critical to the function of the car, so it's most likely going to be on the CAN bus. And then two, we have very easy access to the sensor, which is the throttle pedal, right? So we can easily manipulate the pedal and put like a pattern into it and then look for that same pattern inside of the CAN packets. Now, say you're looking for something a little bit more complicated or a little bit more difficult to physically reach, maybe like a coolant sensor or coolant temperature or oil pressure, or maybe like a NOx sensor. You could physically go and locate that sensor and then stimulate it. Whether or not, for like a coolant one, you may be putting a hot pot and then a cold pot, or like a hot container of water and a cold container, and just do like a pattern and look for that pattern in the CAN network. Or you could tap it, like if it's a NOx sensor, you could tap it or disconnect it and apply whatever the specifications are for voltage into the plug. But before you go and do all that, because it can be difficult, if you have access to software that enables you to read the outputs of those sensors, that might be kind of like a shortcut, maybe, give or take. So that's what I'm going to show you how to do today. For this car, it has an ECU flash, and because of that, I have a cable that connects to the ECU, and I have some software that can read more parameters from the ECU that are just found on the OBD port. Usually that stuff is proprietary to the different manufacturers, but depending on whether or not you have an ECU flash or you have access to some specialized software, you can generally read extra parameters outside of what you can find on the OBD port. So today I want to just quickly cover how I'm going to read something like coolant or oil temperature using this proprietary software, and then correlate that to a CAN dump, and then find the CAN ID, the byte position, and then determine what the formula is to decode it. So let me go ahead and set that all up right now, and then I'll show you kind of the protocol or the workflow as to how I go about doing that. Okay guys, so I've got the windows up here. I apologize, but I'm going to fire the engine up and it's going to get loud, and I want you to be able to hear me. Let's see here. First things first, I've got the data logger program with the CAN logging script, right? And then the next thing I have is the Durametric software that comes for the Cayman, right? There are chances are, for whatever brand of manufacturer of car that you have, there's a version or a type of software that's similar to this. So I'm going to connect to it really quick. And inside of all of this, I've got a bunch of parameters that I can look at, view, reset, whatever. For this episode, or for this video, what we're going to do is look at engine oil temperature and coolant temperature, because that's important to me, and I think for most guys that's kind of one of the parameters that you want to be watching. Now, just to be clear, not all software is going to look like this, so you're going to have to hunt around and find stuff that works or that gives you what you want. And for instance, in this software, engine oil is clearly called out as engine oil temperature, but engine temperature is not called out as coolant. So it's kind of, sometimes there's different terminology for all that. Right now the motor is off, engine's off, but I'm able to read this data from the CAN bus, and I cannot log inside of this software. So what I'm going to do is type in, open up a notepad, engine temperature, i.e. coolant, 21.8 C, and then engine oil temperature, 22.5 C. And so while that's running, not sure if I have to turn the engine on or not first. So let's go ahead and I don't know if when I fire this it's going to disconnect. Let's find out right here. You know what? Let's start my putty log. So we'll start the logging of this first. So this is going to be our can logger. That's going. So right now, somewhere inside of this can file, there is a can ID and a byte ID that when a formula is applied, it should give me these two values here, engine temperature and coolant temperature, or engine temperature, or i.e. coolant temperature, or engine oil temperature. So I'm going to go ahead and start the car here. I don't know if I'm going to lose connection and I'll have to restart this process, but we'll see. Yeah, it looks like the Durametric software lost connection. So I'm going to go ahead and close it. At least we got the initial starting values. Quickly pull this up. CAN bus is logging fast because the data logger is being powered by the laptop, so there was no loss of connection there. Come back over here. Go over these two values. Okay, so we started at 21.8, we're already at 27, and then oil temperature we started at 22.5, and we're already 24. So we know that just from a basic understanding of engines, we can confirm that engine temperature is coolant because we know that coolant is used to help warm up the oil and warm up the engine, and that it's always going to warm up faster than engine oil until, what is it, like 198 or 187 or something like that, and then it'll kind of taper off, and then engine oil can go higher depending on the circumstance of the car and how you're driving it. But coolant's always going to warm up fastest. So that's a nice little kind of double check there that we're seeing engine temperature heat up faster or raise faster. Give it a couple revs here. And so we're going to let this go for, I don't know, a few minutes, at least until I get a couple different values for the temperatures. And then what I'm going to do is make a note of it. Engine let's see if we can get this done quickly. 40.5, 30. 41, 42, and 30.8. Close that log. Okay, so we closed the log, and we closed it. Okay, so we closed the log, and we closed it so that we know that whatever the value is when we close the log, that's what we're seeing in the software, because we have to kind of decode that and figure out what the formula is afterwards, and we don't want to be too far off. Now comes the hard part, right? So we've got to open that can dump and start digging around. I apologize for the on-screen recording. This laptop kind of sucks. And it's slow. Oh, it remembers it from last time. Okay, cool. Yes. So this time, because we have the engine running, if you remember what the CAN file looked like previously, it was pretty sparse. There's going to be more information here that we have to kind of get through. So again, I'm going to get rid of this. ID 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then I'm going to filter this. Okay, so here comes the tough part. Let's see how many IDs we have to look at. Quite a bit. And there's like, what, 20 here, give or take? And unfortunately, because we don't have physical access to the coolant temperature sensor and the engine engine temperature oil sensor, we can't input a pattern into the sensors. So we're stuck with whatever the pattern is from just naturally running the motor and allowing it to heat up. And because we don't know what the formula is, we don't know what the byte value is going to be for our starting temperature and our final temperature, i.e. what the corresponding byte value is for like 21.8 or 22.5, and then the final byte value for 42 or 30.8. So now it's much more hazy, and we're not sure what we should be looking for. Now we can go out on a limb and guess that the byte values should be relatively low, right? Because these are pretty low temperatures to begin with, and most engines aren't going to see much lower, and we can assume that as we reach operating temperatures, we're going to see a relatively greater value than what we started with. So those are like the two basic things that we know, and then we know that it should be, at least for coolant, it was a pretty quick spike or a change in value, and for engine it was a relatively slow change in value, or a very relatively not as steep of a slope. So those are the things that we know, and now we have to go in and look for a pattern like that inside of the raw dump. And there might be, I think there is a faster way to do this, but maybe these tools aren't accessible to everyone, so I'm pretty much just going to do this old school and hope that you guys can kind of see how this works or what this process is like. So start with 93, and I might make a note of this, what I think is not, or a bad ID, or a maybe ID, right? Just so I don't get confused. So 93 is definitely not the right one. Not enough information here, and I didn't see this ID enough times. 190. Again, not a good one. Not enough information. 94. Okay, 94. Position 0, 1, 2, 3. Those don't work because throughout the entire log they stay as 0. Not useful. Position 5 seems to be cycling. This pattern is going over and over. It's repeating over and over again, so that can't be it. Same with position 7. 6 shows me nothing, or it's the same value throughout the entire log. Number 4, let's look at number 4 here. Number 4 does not change. Okay, so we verified 194, likely not the right address or the ID. So let's look at 320. 320. 0 is not going to be it. 2 is not going to be it. 3 is not going to be it, because those 3 and 4 are 2 and 3 are cycling. Position 1 is the same value the entire time, so that can't be it. So I'll make a note that 320 is not it. Okay, let's keep going. 330. Okay, 6 is out of the question right away because it's cycling. And as we run through this log, Okay, 0 through 5 are the same every time. Let's look at 7 here. 7 is 128, 127. It's bouncing around. Let's see as we go down. No. Ooh. No. So 330 is not it as well. 357. Nope. 528. Nope. 578. No. 578, no. Although this kind of looks, this one right here, that looks like RPM a little bit, maybe. But that's neither here nor there because we're not doing that right now. 581. Okay, there's two interesting, well, let me see here. Is there one or two interesting ones here? Okay, the first one that's interesting is position 1. Because over the course of the entire log, position 1 is increasing, right? So that's interesting, so I'm going to make a note of that. A maybe ID is 581, position 1, okay? And I don't know if this is coolant or oil, but we'll figure out a way to figure that out here quickly once we grab another iffy one. Position 3, no. Position 4, no. Position 5, no. What about 6, no. Okay. Position, oh wait, 5, no. 6, let's look at 6 here. 6, no. I don't think. Because it goes up, then it goes back down. And 7, no. Okay. 82. 582. Let's look at that again. 582. 582, I'm going to go with a no. I'm going to look quickly at 581 one more time here. And what I'm going to do is look at position 1. Okay, 93. And I'm looking at this value, byte value of 93. And I'll write this right here, 581. Look at this 93 because our starting temperatures are so close to one another that assuming that they didn't use some like two crazy different formulas and that 581 is the correct byte position and ID number for one of these parameters, then the other parameter that we're looking for should somewhere be around byte value 93. Right? That's just a guess, I think, but that's probably a good way to think about it. All right, so let's look at 586. No. $776. No. 799. No. 1089. Boom. Okay, so we're talking about byte value 93, and I saw this 94, and I was like, oh, that's kind of close to 93, and then I'm looking at the way this value changes over time, and it consistently goes up, right? So I'm thinking 1089 is a maybe. So 1089, position 5. Okay, so I'm pretty confident in those just based on the patterns and the fact that my two starting byte values are very close, and I could keep running down the list to try to find more potential where's my mouse here? Oh yeah, to find more potential areas of interest or packet IDs and byte values of interest. But I am just going to start here on the whim and on the guess that this is right. So let's see. So how do I know which is which? Now, we're working on the theory here that the formula is the same, and there's really no reason for them to use two different formulas. So we know that coolant temperature got to a higher value first than engine oil. So if I look at 1089, the highest value it got to was 105, right before I turned it off. So we go 94 to 105, and what was the 581, was it? Look at 581, 93 to 120, 120. Okay, 93 to 120. Now we know that coolant started at a lower temperature than oil. 93 is lower than 94, and it ended up at a higher value than oil, which is 120, than 105. So my guess is that 581 is coolant, and that 1089 is engine oil temperature. Okay, so how do we figure out the formula? I'm really, really bad at math. But there's like tables and stuff that you can enter into, and it'll like spit out a y equals mx plus b formula. And I think you can also do it in Excel. Hey guys, I'm sorry. I am editing the video here, and I just realized that the laptop, somewhere over the course of recording, the laptop kind of just shit the bed, and it stopped recording the screen. And so you kind of didn't get to see how the rest of the video kind of comes together. And I think it's just because it's a shitty laptop and it wasn't able to do all of that at one time. I mean, I've used it to reverse engineer the CAN bus and sniff the CAN bus plenty of times. It just couldn't record its own screen and do all this other stuff. So where we left off was we had found the what we thought were the correct CAN IDs, as well as the byte positions here and here. And what I showed you was I had pulled up the configuration for the Cayman inside of the race capture system and confirmed that those were, one, the correct CAN IDs, and two, the correct bytes or byte positions. Then what I did was I pulled up, I dumped the CAN bus again, pulled up Durametric software, and just grabbed one more data point for coolant and for engine temperature or oil temperature. And then I wanted to show you how to find the formula to take that decimal byte value and convert it into a real world temperature value. So this is what I think is important and what I want to show you. What I've done is I've created two tables here, one for coolant and one for engine oil, and I've plugged in the values into this table. The x value is the can value or the decimal value that is coming from the can dump. So we've got 93, 114, and 120. So 93 was that lower temperature, the first value that we got, 93. And the 120 is the final value from the can dump that we got, which is 120. And the 114 was from the second dump that I did after the front half of the recording of the video. When you turn the engine off, coolant will start to cool down. It might peak a little bit shortly after and then start to cool down. And then, generally speaking, engine oil still continues to rise for a longer period than coolant after you've turned the engine off. So the 114 is the coolant coming back down in temperature, and the corresponding value for that is 37.5. Then I went ahead and plugged in the real-world values here. And then for the oil actually continues to rise in temperature, so that's where this 111 comes from. And the corresponding real-world value in Celsius is 35.3. So next we need to use some Excel or spreadsheet formulas or functions to do a linear regression to figure out what the formula is to turn these decimal values into real-world values. And it's going to be like a y equals mx plus b function, which you may or may not remember from math, like way back in the day. I used to remember how to do this by hand. I don't anymore, so I had to Google and try to figure out which functions I needed to use to take this table and have it spit out a y equals mx plus b formula for me. I guess before we get into that, if the function has to be exponential, it's going to be completely different, but for the most part, these sensors are pretty much always linear. Okay, so the function is for OpenOffice. I don't know what it is for Excel. Index minus, and then my first column of data, which is always going to be my y, then my x, close the function, then this 1 and this 2, I'm not sure what they do because I haven't looked at what the function index does, but when you do 1 semicolon 2, it gives you the y-intercept, right? And then if we do the same function, my y values, then my x values, close the function, and we do 1 semicolon 1, this will give me my slope. Okay, so can I show it to you? Maybe I can show it to you. I don't know if I can show it to you, but inside of my race capture configuration for the Cayman, the formula was 0.7 times 0.75. I'm sorry, was it divided? No, it's times 0.75 divided by 1, which is nothing, minus 48. Or divided by 1, which is the same, minus 48, which is really close. This is actually a better formula, the one we just determined using the spreadsheet. I think previously I just kind of was guessing or got really close. This is a better way to do it. And believe me, I kind of plugged it in. I plugged it into Race Capture, and then essentially programmed the data logger to read that, and then pulled up the Durametric software to compare it, and it was pulling exactly the same. Too lazy to show you now, but trust me that it was working. So that pretty much covers it. This is essentially a way to use software that you may have to help you sniff and reverse engineer the CAN bus, and it's one of the fastest ways to do it. If that information is available via like passive sniffing of the CAN bus or passive reading of the CAN bus. In other situations, like with the Subaru, some of the more complex engine parameters cannot be passively read from the CAN bus, but have to be actively requested, right? So it's a little bit more complicated, and that is going to be the topic we cover in the next video. And I imagine that most cars today have some sort of function or diagnostic protocol like that. So although you may not have a Subaru, it may not be specific to you, but it's worth watching if you're kind of gonna go down that route. So if you have any questions about what we covered in this video, please don't hesitate to ask below, and I will do my best. Not an expert or anything, but I'll do my best to try to help you out or answer any questions that come up. As always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you at the next one. Take care, guys.